Well, it's International Women's Day, and we get to a very special interview with Ms. Smriti Irani, who's taken her time out on a very busy day, back-to-back interviews, engagements. I know, ma'am. So thank you so much for joining us here on Times Network.
Yeah.
I wish every day was Women's Day, but till that happens, still so much ground that needs to be covered. And it's been such a big year with, COVID-19, the lockdown. Would you say that technology at least turned out to be a leveler in 2020?
Absolutely, especially a lever in terms of narrative. Nayantara, you know that when women who were positioned to leave companies on a sabbatical because they had to give birth, there was a concept and a conversation around work from home. And many women whispered about it being a death knell as far as their careers were concerned. They knew that the minute they embraced the concept of work from home, that means that their careers would meet a dead end and there would be no coming back. And I think with COVID, work from home became as much a male concept as it did a female one. It also changed a little bit of the matrix at home, where you saw a lot of men participating in so-called homemaking chores. And I think that technology became that leveler is to be celebrated, but also be sustained. I'm just hoping in a post-COVID world, we don't actualize the old normal and we continue with the new.
Ma'am, there's so many reports, studies, data out there which just shows what can happen to the Indian economy, the per capita income, our purchasing power, if more women were to enter the workforce. As the union minister, what are the biggest challenges that you're seeing on that front? Why are we not? What will it take to get more women to participate in the workforce?
I think that one of the greatest challenges we have is to ensure that more and more women come into the organized sector. Because if you look at the numbers right now, they blossom when it comes to the unorganized sector. And one of the reasons is that there is resistance with regards to pay parity. There is a resistance to giving women as much access to facilities as there would be incumbent upon an organization in the organized sector. For instance, the government did give a prolonged maternity leave under the aegis of the Honorable Prime Minister. And it was quite heart-wrenching when industry, in fact, responded by saying, I don't think such a long gestation period with regards to maternity leave will be helpful for women. And I think that these kind of inputs where a government, for instance, in textiles, the government gave additional support with regards to Provident Fund, with regards to formalization of labor in the textile segment, wherein 70% of the sector is serviced by women. So I think segment by segment, if we look at formalization, one of the largest spaces where a large contingent of unorganized labor in the female gender exists is agriculture. So if you look at agricultural labor today, you will find that 80 to 90% of that labor is female oriented. And I think that when you see systems get more into the organized setup, that's when you see the formal labor force participation numbers for women go up. But I think that my concern also stems from a future which holds a challenge today in the present. There are conversations around technology and STEM-based jobs in the forthcoming economic cycles. There is an assumption that you will have close to 80% of the new jobs based on STEM. And I think that the migration of women from the school system onwards to the higher education systems and their oscillation towards technology institution is an abysmal 20 to 25%. And I think that's where we also need to focus on, because if most of the jobs are going to be tech-based and STEM-based, will women stand a chance to have an equal opportunity to compete for those jobs with men?
The problem also is, ma'am, that the problem starts right from the beginning. If a family cannot afford to send all children to school or all children to colleges because somebody needs to work as well, it's always the woman child, or most times it's the woman child also that suffers. So that behavioral change also needs to take place.
I agree with the aspect with regards to mindset change. I don't think conversations around it are new. I think there has been a consistent effort to raise a consciousness about how mindsets need to change. But should the mindset change be restricted only to families? Is there a need for a corporate mindset change? For instance, when I'm talking about tech-based jobs, there are international studies which show, and there's one Niti Aayog report which showed that 57% women gave up on an opportunity to progress in their careers because of familial responsibilities in the science segment. There is an additionality in terms of research numbers, which says close to 60% women, plus minus 5% here or there. Women feel that the field of technology is too male-dominated for them to, in fact, survive a job there, and actually do not take up progressively jobs in the tech sector. So I think if you look at, even when you spoke in the beginning about affordability of devices, the expansion of technology, how many companies which are technology-based are today owned by women? So when you look at women come to the fore with regards to, let's say, actualizing their commercial capacity with regards to an innovation or a tech-based idea, how many of them get VC support? But then if you look at the VC structure, how many women are in leadership positions there as well? So it is a vicious cycle that needs to be broken. Mindsets need to change, not only at the home front, but also at the corporate front. For again, the Sexual Harassment at Workplace Bill was passed by Parliament. I had the privilege of debating it in the year 2013 in the Rajya Sabha. From then to now, 2021, how many companies actually have an internal complaints committee registered within the company, actually helping out or providing that safe environment for working women within their organizations? And when I talk about companies per se, I'm not talking about the large organizations. How many mid-sized, how many SMEs have that kind of a facilitation for women? So I think that the problem in terms of mindset change needs to percolate down to every organizational or familial structure that we know of in our country, in our society.
A very important point you're raising when you say that how many corporates have stepped up, irrespective of their size. You've also talked about how you were saddened to see, it was heart-wrenching that when it came to the maternity rule, how many of them responded. So how to correct that? Is it going to have to be via policies or just constant engagement?
I think when you start shifting the focus on the need to put those women in those positions of authority, their need stems from ensuring that the education sector becomes more gender-oriented. And that is why the new education policy, for the first time in the history of our country, speaks about a gender inclusion fund, where one Prime Minister has spoken of the Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao Andolan, where there is a consciousness that is raised with regards to the need to support the girl child through the school system. Additionally, there will be, I'm sure, provisions made to show that the graduation for women from school systems onwards to higher education is something that is consistently supported. The Department of Science and Technology, or biotechnology for that matter, has again incessantly put their support behind female scientific communities. I think that one of the greatest joys for us as Indians was when the Mars mission was manned, in fact, was womaned by such stupendous female scientists and technologists. There is also a need, Nayantara, to celebrate women who are not pedigreed. If you look at the list of achievers who will be celebrated, let's say on the 8th of March, you will find a lot of faces who have consistently been in that chart or that set number of women who are to be celebrated. How many of us actually take the pains to find that female innovator at the grassroots? To find a woman who might not belong to a pedigreed background, who has the capacity to policy or from an administrative capacity bring about change. So I think there has to be a mindset about celebrating every achievement of every woman and not making it an elitist celebration of a female capacity. I also, as a female worker, as a professional, tell people that if you need to judge me as a competitive person and not just a woman, judge me on my capacity to contribute as much as you would a man. Judge me on issues when I sit and negotiate contracts. Judge me equally to a man when I sit and negotiate salaries. And I'm not talking about just rural ecosystem where women need to sit and talk about salaries. I see a persistent negation of a woman who wants to sit and, let's say, talk about a severance package, who wants to sit and talk about what happens if she's not evaluated judiciously, or there is a sense of how do I say this, discrimination. Because if you look at profiles and researches that have taken place with regards to how women progress in their careers, most women find it easy comparatively to get into entry-level jobs. It is when they need to get to the mid-managerial positions, or for that matter, CEO positions, that's where the real bind takes place. And that is when a woman is told that don't compete, possibly settle for the next best, because at least we assure you of a particular package, of a comfortable contract. So I think I would also like to celebrate and support women who grind their teeth and actually just vie for the top job and just go for it and not be punished for it.
And that's why it's also important to celebrate those stories every day and not just on 8th of March.
Absolutely. It's as though all our challenges and solutions happen only on one day. I mean, most women who would speak to you today, or for that matter, even speak about themselves, they might have one raised eyebrow saying that just one day. I mean, every day is a struggle. Every day is a search for a better me. And I think that when we do that every day, we remind ourselves of our inherent potential to reach our best. I also feel that more and more conversations, which I appreciate, are about not limiting women to silos of relationships, to segregate how professionally women act, and not to demonize them from their gender perspective if they are extremely ambitious, if they are extremely sharp, especially with their comebacks. So there is much that needs to be done.
Yes, those comebacks, especially yours, are now becoming famous, haven't they? But ma'am, can I ask you for a sneak peek of what we can see from you in the coming year? You know, it's a long journey. I understand that every day will be a Women's Day, but if you can give a sneak peek of what's in the works.
So the Prime Minister's blessings came in the form of the budget announcement for a new nutrition program, but I think somewhere in the annexures of the budget document were two other schemes which just went unnoticed. One was Mission Shakti and the other was Mission Vatsalya, and I'm talking both of women and children. Before this, Nayantara, this government came into in a position of service, you'd be shocked that provisions financially for building of a toilet was missing in the supplementary nutrition program. It is this government that actually made a separate funding arrangement for building toilets and providing clean drinking waters in close to 14 lakh Anganwadis in the country. The 15th Finance Commission, if you look at the devolution of funds and the interdepartmental fiscal transfers, gender is one of the lenses and the prisms through which the Finance Commission, upon our submission to it as a ministry, considered it in the Government of India Finance Ministry, then accepted that direction of the Finance Commission. I think for the first time in the history of our country, in fact, we are the only country, I'm subject to that correction, but that's what I've last checked, where devolution of funds between center and state has happened with gender being one of the focal points.
And ma'am, I'm sure you also have plans. You also had the textiles ministry, which we know kind of economic activity it creates, the kind of jobs it creates. So just as an example from that perspective, how will we ensure that our women are not left out of manufacturing, especially as we enter this new world of machine learning, artificial intelligence, all of that?
One of the changes that I brought slightly, the amended Tufts policy that came, which was about upgradation of technology and machines for the textile sector. We actually had it mandatory that only those companies will get subsidies who actually have an internal complaints committee. Now, that was not part of Tufts, or that was not a part of the narrative for getting subsidy by a textile organization or industry partner, but I made that mandatory, and everybody started writing up to the Textile Commissioner's office that don't worry, we have made sure that these are the parameters with which we serve our female employees better.
And would you request your other colleagues in the Council of Ministers and the Cabinet to perhaps also follow this?
They are most responsive to it. Like I said, if it comes to nutrition, I'm working today with 16 ministries. If it comes to Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, I'm working as much as with Ministry of Education as I am with sports. There is a very, very inherent and natural relationship between the Ministry of Women and Child Development and the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. It is a partnership that goes back decades, which we have strengthened. So be it Dr. Harshvardhan, be it Nishankji, be it Kiran Rijiju, or for that matter, be it our friends in the DFS. We've had our ministers and our administrative hierarchy reach out and support us.
Ma'am, while we've talked about including women in the workforce, the other part I want to ask is first, is there inclusion? And something you touched upon lightly also, which is a global problem, is just to make sure that women are paid equally. Same pay for the same work that the men are doing. Anything that we can expect on that front?
There is already a legal framework available to ensure gender parity for work. How have we empowered women to negotiate their contracts and their salaries? And that is why I said somewhere in the middle of this interview that it is extremely essential that when we teach girls how to approach a new job, we also teach them how to do their contracts, or for that matter, how to not sign away their future rights at a workplace, how to demand a particular set of environments. And I think that is where there is a lot of entry-level resistance, or for that matter, absence of knowledge. And I say this from my own personal experience as a working professional of over 2.5 decades in the media business. I remember my first contract is something that I just blindly signed because I needed the money. When I sat down to sign the second contract, there was a lot of bad blood because I was supposed to be grateful as a woman that I had a job and I wanted equal pay. In fact, I demanded more than the men because I said, I'm carrying my project on my shoulders, not the men who keep changing every 5 days. I ground my teeth. I was a bit unpopular with the management that I was working for, but I set a trend for others to follow. And I said that it doesn't matter what my gender is. If I'm the hero of the piece, pay me for it.
Who is going to teach that? That's the other big question, right?
Absolutely. And I think those organizations that are so-called dedicated to the cause of women, every industry body has a female wing. Why not dedicate that wing to these aspects instead of doing a seminar on a book or conversation on a policy? Why not industry bodies collaborate to ensure that women-led enterprises are supported more with credit, with innovation, with more access to newer markets, can be helped in bettering the quality of their products. I made a faux pas, you may call it, but the how do I say this, feminist in me somewhere came out recently, but I was in an e-commerce platform, Invite, and they had the flowery way of presenting female-led businesses. And I took affront to it. I said, would you present a male business by saying, ye bada acha aadmi hai, yes, bada sangharsh kiya hai? Or would you actually certify a male-led enterprise by saying, look at how competitive the price points are, look at how robust the produce line is, or for that matter, look at the quality of the product. So I think even how we present women-led businesses needs to change, and how we present women leaders within those business systems has to change. If they are go-getters, if they are tough as nails, too bad. That's them. I think we need to stop demonizing women who are tough negotiators, especially on the tables with regards to contracts.
In fact, there have been studies after studies, not just in India, but even in the United States, how women feel guilty asking for a raise. They feel embarrassed asking for a raise.
I don't think it's the guilt. I think it's the fear of losing the opportunity and the job. Guilt is a much more feminine word.
Okay.
Fear is much better.
Okay.
We have to be very, very honest about it. I've gone through it. I'm sure you have too. So it is a choice that you need to make between keeping a job and getting a promotion. Whereas that is not a choice that a man has to make. Because if you push too hard, you always have somebody more agreeable than you, who's not wanting as much as you to take your place.
You've been an outlier. You told us one incident of how you negotiated a salary, how you were tough to negotiate a salary and you demanded more in your second.
I was thrown out. From one project I was.
So you did that. And my question to you also is, have you faced that in politics at all?
Politics, there's no pay. In
Not
fact,
for-
parliamentarian, I'm running on a 30% pay cut.
Not for pay. Have you ever had to, smash patriarchy in politics? If you could share.
I had a double-edged disadvantage. In fact, a disadvantage that was threefold. I was an actor, I was young, and then I'm a woman. I think that they were a triple whammy when it came to me. being an actor, there was a presumption that I'd be such a dud that I wouldn't know one page of the policy from another, or for that matter, would not know where policies, or for that matter, departments intersected. Being young, I was not supposed to have enough experience to have a very, very educated and evidenced approach to a particular issue. And being a woman, of course, when you come to a position of authority and power, that is for the first time that you get a sense of what it is to be a woman. I mean, I never had a sense of disadvantage when I was in the media business. I never went through that. But in politics, yes, when laden with power, I think that's where it very slightly creeps in. So if you have a very assertive male politician, that'd still be fine if you are an assertive female politician in a position of authority. And I think be it politics or be it in the corporate sector, it's about being assertive in a position of power. That's when you're supposed to be either too cantankerous or too rude or too unsettled. And I think those are the barriers that women in positions of power face.
Before I end this interview, I want to ask you one question. We've talked a lot about industry. We've talked a lot about corporates. What about the new economy? Does it sadden you that even in the space of startups, which is so vibrant, it's being led primarily by the youth, this gender gap exists there too?
I think that of the 41,000 startups that have come to the fore in the past 4 years, we have seen close to 41 to 44% of it, again, subject to correction. But I remember that was the amount of female-led startups, which raised over $60 to $63 billion worth of cash for themselves. Would I want it to be a 50-50? Hell, I want it to be a 60-40 in the favor of women. But again, we need to fundamentally look at the challenge with regards to the issue. One is access to credit. But before that is the actualization of an innovative idea into a commercially competent idea. I think many of women, especially in the scientific or the tech field, might come upon an idea but not know the commercial value of it or not have enough time to spend, and they might undervalue their innovation and sell out their technology or their research without even knowing the maximization of potential that is possible within that realm. So the more you see women get encouraged with regards to one research, because today, if you look at the faculty position in academic institutions, which are science-based, or for that matter, higher education, only 15% of academic leaders are women. And second, if you look at how many women are in positions of research who are commercializing that research, that number is equally abysmal. So if you're looking at a startup, which is tech-based or science-based, where is the fundamental change that you'd like to see? You'd like to see the change in academia, then you would like to see the change in, like I said, commercialization, negotiations, and then you'd like to also additionally see the change with regards to access to credit. And I keep telling people that even if you look at a scheme like Mudra, which was not meant for a particular gender, you have 70% beneficiaries as women. But when you look at the return on investment, NPA is less than 2%, which means women are good investments.
And they're protected investments.
Absolutely. I think the woman who takes that credit is extremely conscientious, not only about the immediate after effects of not paying back, but also is savvy enough to know that how her credit history gets impacted. But more so, there is a moral competence behind it.
Yeah.
It's not as if men don't know what will happen to their credit worthiness if they don't pay back. But the conscientiousness in women is far more.
Let's hope the banks also learn from this and figure it out. I do hope that next year when we talk on International Women's Day, a lot more has changed and we are closer to every day being a Women's Day. Ms. Smriti Irani, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.